Welcome to the Survivalist Podcast with Mark Buhali, Doc Montana, and Matt Gould. In each episode of the Survivalist Podcast, we look at different events and catastrophes that could happen to you. Then we give you the knowledge, resources, and recommendations you need to survive. The Survivalist Podcast is brought to you by Forge Survival Supply.
Find peace of mind for your family at Forge Survival Supply. Founded by United States Marine Corps veterans, Forge is the premier destination for quality American-made survival and emergency preparedness products. Freeze-dried foods, water filtration, fire starters, fully equipped bug-out bags. Find everything your family needs to stay safe, protected, and nourished during times of uncertainty at ForgeSurvivalSupply.com. As a listener of this program, Forge Survival Supply would like to give you an additional 10% savings. That's right, an additional 10% off your entire order, plus free shipping by entering discount code SURVIVOR at checkout. That's ForgeSurvivalSupply.com and use discount code SURVIVOR.
This podcast is sponsored by Epic Water Bottles and Pitchers. Every year, millions of Americans get sick from drinking contaminated water. Epic water filters remove chlorine, heavy metals, chemicals, industrial pollutants, pesticides and herbicides, iodine, and microbiologicals from your water. So keep your family safe and healthy with Epic Water. You can use the promo code WATER at epicwaterfilters.com for 10% off your order there.
Ooh, fun.
Welcome to the Survivalist Podcast. This is episode 24. I'm here with Doc Montana as usual. How are you, Doc?
I'm great as usual, too.
We got a fantastic guest today, Dan Fogler, who's a friend of mine and a fascinating guy. Dan, you're a brilliant actor. You starred in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and I have to say you really stole the movie. How are you?
Thanks, man. I'm good. I'm freezing on this snowy Hoth-like day, man. I feel like I'm in Empire Strikes Back right now.
I know. I think it's a foot and counting here in New York.
Wow.
So, Dan, what's really great about you is you do comedy and drama, and you won a Tony Award, and you've been in a lot of animated stuff, so you have a great range. And you have a podcast called Dan Fogler's 4D Experience that's really entertaining, so I think everyone should listen to that. The main reason why I wanted to have you on this podcast, though, is because of the movie that you directed and wrote and produced and starred in called Don Peyote.
Yeah, I wore many hats. I co-directed. I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and money and a lot into it, and went out and to family and friends and raised money. And, ooh, that's a hard gig, man. Doing it yourself. It gave me a great respect for just going into a project and just having to act, which is like, and such a great respect for the director who has to captain the whole ship and is with the project until the end. And when you act, you just show up and you leave, and you only have to worry about that. And Don Peyote, I had to make that. My first film was called Hysterical Psycho, and that was just a fun kind of slasher movie that I did with my friends because there was a movie. I was supposed to play Hitchcock at some point. Maybe it'll still happen, but that movie fell apart. But I thought in preparation, I have to direct my version of Psycho, my black and white thriller. So that's what Hysterical Psycho was, and I got bitten by the director bug, but I wasn't really inspired to do anything until Don Peyote, and that came out of kind of necessity because I was going through. It was getting close to 2012, and I was 30, getting to be my 33. My spiritual age, and I went through something very spiritual during that time, and I thought, man, I want to capture this on film, and that's what Don Peyote became. So it started out as a documentary of, I played this character named Warren Allman, who is a guy who's very similar to me, but the anxiety dial is turned up. You know, he's about to get married, which I was at the time, and he hasn't really gotten his life together, and they're heading into 2012, and at that time, you know, he didn't know what the hell was going to happen. Was it going to be the end of the world? So he just had a lot of anxiety going into it, and so he starts going through just trying to find wise men and doing all these interviews to find all of these people to tell him, you know, it's really, he's searching for himself. He's really trying to know himself enough to see if he has what it takes, you know, to become a man and go into the future. But he goes to all these different wise men for interviews, everyone from survivalists to economists to, you know, spiritualists, you know, all the different variations along the spectrum of people you can get advice from. And that's the first part of the movie. He's just trying to find interviews about, you know, what is 2012? What's your opinion?
Yeah.
And and how do I prepare? You know, and some people were like, you know, go the survivalist route, you know, and then that part of the movie, he starts to get himself healthy, very healthy. He buys a gun to protect his family, you know, and he basically starts learning how to defend himself. He starts learning mixed martial arts, and
that's the part of it that we talk about a lot on this podcast is, you know, how to defend yourself, how to be ready. When you were thinking of 2012, were you thinking of it as metaphorical, or were you, you know, or was Warren thinking of it as something that could really happen?
Well, at the time when 2012 was happening, which is when we were making the film, I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. Nobody really knew what the hell was going to happen. There were
I did.
You did.
Nothing was going to happen. Yeah, absolutely nothing.
Great. There were people that were no, that's fine. There were people that were in that camp who thought nothing was going to happen. And then there are obviously people that thought it was the end of the fucking world. And then there are obviously people that thought that it was going to be a change in consciousness and a real spiritual boost in the right direction. So there were a lot of different trains of thought about the subject. How did you know that nothing was going to happen?
Oh, because nothing ever does. There was no indication that it would be any different than any other year. Although what I did find interesting is the number of people that were kind of hoping something would happen. And I kind of use that as a reflection of society, that maybe too many people are in need of a change, or they're not happy where they are. And I mean, they could get a different job, or they could just have the world destroyed, and it's kind of the same outcome.
Well, some people that I talked to who were in connection to the elders, Mayan elders, Hopi elders, they all said that it was really the Mayans' way of saying 2012, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Is that the end? Why did they stop there? And then they said that it was because if you look at the pyramid, their little the pyramids that they make that show the progression of how time is speeding up and how humanity deals with time, and they predicted that in our phase of our evolution, where we would be, that we would need a little fire under our asses, that we would need something like, oh shit, is the world going to end? For us to have a little bit of fear, a shamanic, there are these heroes' journeys that they said in certain tribes where you basically send kids defenseless out into the woods. You know, they know how to survive, but they've never been out there alone. And this is their trial by fire. This is their trial by fear. So
the rite of passage.
The rite of passage. So this is a rite of passage for fucking humanity. That's what they said that 2012 was going to be. Was that it was going to be this moment where they needed to scare the shit out of enough people for us to evolve in the correct direction, which is what they were talking about with the change of consciousness. So hopefully, And the movie Don Peyote is about, I don't know if you ever heard of the 100th monkey theory. Warren Allman, who becomes Don Peyote, this street prophet, is the 100th monkey, which basically means if you get enough people, enough organisms in a species doing the same habitual thing, that without any communication, it will exponentially jump to the rest of the species around the world, which is what happened to some monkeys, supposedly. There were monkeys that were on an island, and they were totally cut off from the rest of the world, and the scientists there taught them to wash their hands before they ate, and obviously they stopped getting sicker, and they were able to, thrive. So by the time the 100th monkey on the island figured out how to wash their hands, suddenly the scientists started getting calls from around the world. Holy shit, we've started noticing monkeys in the wild washing their hands before they eat. And so this theory is technically, what I'm trying to say with this movie is, if you get enough people on the same page of compassion, love, peace, that the 100th monkey theory will kick in, and this habit will spread across the world like wildfire, and you can save the world. I mean, it's a very it's very hopeful and optimistic, but there's a science to it, which is what I thought was kind of great.
That's fascinating. Have you watched? Have either of you guys watched Steve Bannon's film, which is called I think Generation Zero?
No, I haven't.
Steve Bannon is Trump's advisor, and he made a film that he talked about the turning. I guess there's a big movement to talk about the turnings, which are basically like four phases that in his theory, four phases that a society goes through. And, first it's like growth and peace, and then it's complacency, and then it moves into, I forget,
revolution.
Like breakdown, and then the fourth turning is revolution. Yeah. And this is what he said, the revolution started in 2008 with the housing crisis. That's what his film's about. And it's just interesting because obviously he's pretty far on the right wing, but it does feel like on a day-to-day basis, like major things are going to happen or about to happen. Well, what do you think that's about?
That's interesting. That sounds like some, you ever read or seen Watchmen?
Yes.
Yeah. So the end of that book has the Ozymandias, who is the Egyptian-clad corporate menace, who was really just trying to steer us toward peace and harmony. And he wants to, just like everyone else, he wants to bring on peace and harmony globally and unite everybody as brothers and sisters, to create a utopia. And this sounds wonderful. Now, the way he decides to go about it, because he's the smartest man on earth, and he decides that the way to pull everybody together is to fabricate an outside menace, some kind of alien menace. Kind of like what Reagan talks about, if we found out that there were aliens out there, then all these wars wouldn't mean anything, and we'd all be brothers and sisters against one, outside evil, terrible thing coming to kill us.
Independence Day.
Right,
Independence Day.
Exactly. So this goes along the same lines, where if you want to bring peace and you want to unite everybody, but you still want to keep that pyramid in control and be at the top of it, then you fabricate some disaster, and then everybody comes together in love and peace and harmony, and then you can move forward accordingly with your plans. Now, does that sound like a familiar tactic that has been used throughout history?
Well, it does.
Well, we always have to have the enemy,
right?
Keep us together,
even if it's fabricated, right?
Well, if we're going to go into conspiracy theories, you could argue the degree of fabrication is really what's up, not whether or not there's any fabrication. I mean, we're seeing that right now. How big a threat is ISIS?
Right, the boogeyman.
Yeah, I mean, if you literally go down to the numbers, it's just atrocious what happens, except the chances of anything happening are darn close to zero for any individual person versus something else like loss of health care or getting cancer, which is actually quite high. So when we look at environmental regulations versus ISIS, people get scared of ISIS.
There's enough things out there in the, with whether you believe in, global warming and the change in the weather patterns, whether you believe that or not, the fact is that there are tsunamis and there are earthquakes and there are freak storms, and there's enough things out there that can kill us, that we should worry about. What my boogeyman, if I was going to, and it's already out there. I mean, it's the Al Gore route. It's, you want a boogeyman, it's here. The fucking weather is coming to kill us. Now we have to do something about it. Let's band together. That's how you create your utopia without fucking killing people in order to get people riled up and start wars. And now this whole fucking ban, he wants to ban Muslims. I mean, it's just like every single thing that Trump does and his cabinet of maniacs, every single move he makes, doesn't it seem like he's just going up and just pissing on a hornet's nest? He's just like, okay, here's your reason. Here's your reason, because, we do not like you, all of you, not just the ones that we are troublesome, all of you. It's just like, whoa, what the fuck? Don't speak for me like that. You're pissing everybody off. He's calling Australia. Why is he pissing off Australia?
Well, if you want to run down the conspiracy aspect of that, there's a lot of folks that are starting to wonder if those are the false flags. We're getting riled up about, he gets in a spat with the PM of Australia, or he attacks some religious group. What are we not paying attention to? That's where some are saying, wait a minute, what do you mean Putin's back in Ukraine? When did that happen? Well, it happened while we were arguing about whether or not it was a ban or it was a safety measure or whatever else. So as long as there's this constant stream, and you saw there's a new one today, a new thing to get all excited about that's pretty much,
nothing.
Tabloid headline, what else is going on in the world?
We
don't know because we're paying attention to this.
And you've talked about that before. Usually we don't go that political, Dan, but, Doc, you've had a really
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I think it's fine.
I can't help
it. We don't censor our guests.
No, we don't censor it. But Doc has this interesting theory because he's studied Trump, or you've studied Trump a little bit about the way he gets business done and the way he gets what he wants, right? Can you tell us about that?
Totally no. Well, it uses several things. One is if you're so absurd, you've basically undone anyone's ability to truly hold you accountable. You're not giving anything that the general population would agree is true, but they agree to let you say it. So basically you can say anything at that point. The second thing that goes on is that if things are crazy enough, you can back off. And even though the lower level is still what would have been considered crazy, it seems more rational than the absolute crazy thing that was first thrown out. So like a total Muslim ban turned into a travel ban, turned into a select group of countries, turned into a policy. So if he had just started out and said, here's the policy that no one from these 7 countries can come in for the next 90 days, people might have freaked out. But it's almost like he's giving in to become rational, except he started from such a high, unrational level that
he's haggling.
It's a business tactic.
Jesus
and I guess I also find it, I assume he has I can't give him enough, I can't extend the credit for him for doing this, but I assume he has a team that literally is, like Hollywood screenwriters or something, trying to, instead of coming up with jokes, they're coming up with things that, like taking the pulse of the nation and saying, if we say something about this, everybody's going to run in that direction.
I think it's got to be B movie. It's got to be B movie screen, because it's like a sci-fi movie we're living right now.
Yeah. Well, as a reality show producer, I would say it's reality show techniques is what it is. I mean, we literally did this on lots of shows that I've been on. Is like, oh, let's have them say this and then see what happens.
So it's Wag the
Jerry
Dog.
Springer.
Yeah.
So what? The Wag the Dog. You guys have seen this movie?
Yeah.
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 I mean, that's what it is. This is the show. It's the theater of politics. They're giving us a show so they can go and do whatever the fuck they want around the world, right? I mean,
it seems like it. So what is it that they want to do you think then? What is the thing?
What makes the most money?
Oil.
Right? There you go. He's saying it all over the place. So how do you get the oil? You piss everybody off. You start a war, so there's a reason for more oil. So we're headed to fucking World War III, man. Why do you think he's pissing on everybody? I mean, that's what's happening.
You know, I guess I would throw that in the possibly can make sense to a average person. I would push it a heck of a lot further, that there's some, you know, to get into my own conspiracy theories. I've wondered, maybe he wants to be the world's first trillionaire. Or maybe there is that, you know, feeling that we're on the brink. So how could you get, you know, the absolute cream of the rich together owning everything?
I think he wants to be.
How far out is that?
I think he wants to be I think he wants to be the last president. I think he wants to get a military state going, and he's going to turn this. You know, he's going to be a dictator, and he's just going to see. This is what Brooklyn Gladiator is about. This is my comic book. Basically, the wall he keeps on building. He just secedes. America secedes from the rest of the world. While the rest of the world goes to shit, he starts over. They start over here. And we have no rights. They've all been taken away while we slept.
Yeah. And
there's taxes on everything. You're taxed to fucking take a piss. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And because at that point it's patriotic. You know.
Well, what's interesting about all that is it's basically going back 5 years and listening to the conservative complaints about the country. We're losing all our rights, we're being taxed. And Trump's election has caused essentially a rise of the liberal prepper and the liberal Second Amendment friend. And I find that kind of interesting because it's as if there is this dark cloud that rolls around that causes humans to react a certain way. And for the previous 8 years, that dark cloud caused maybe a more conservative element to prepare, to consider survival techniques, to stock up on food and firearms and ammunition and et cetera, to learn some skills. Well, and now they're relaxing and we're seeing a dip in gun sales and, you know, everyone's, you know, patting each other on the back, except the other half of the United States is now thinking, wait a minute, I might have to take up arms, or I might have to hunker down, or I might have to bug out, you know, for whatever reason. So therefore, you're seeing in many ways kind of a convergence of these two polar opposites based upon our 21st century view of what it takes for independent survival.
I think you're right. I mean, January 30th, the New Yorker, January 30th, they wrote an article about doomsday prep for the super rich. The very first paragraph is about the 33-year-old co-founder and CEO of Reddit, but is valued at $600 million. He was nearsighted, but he got LASIK surgery, not because he didn't want to wear glasses, because he was preparing for the end of the world and thought, without, you know, if we end up in end of the world as we know it, I'll say, if we end up in a survival scenario, he's screwed if his glasses break. And apparently this is a big deal in Silicon Valley, all over, and New York City. So a lot of hedge fund managers and other economic, you know, titans are turning into preppers. And on the one hand, I turn to the dark side of that and think the global elites are getting ready for when the masses rise up so that they can put them down.
Jesus. There's yeah, having just said that, how do you interpret the mosaic painting at the Colorado airport?
The Denver airport, yes.
Yeah.
So, I made a show called Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura at True TV. We did about 40 episodes, I think. And the episode that was the most highest rated was the Denver airport episode. Are you familiar with this, Doc?
Yeah. I am. And to me, those are, that's one of the shortcomings, I guess, of a human finding patterns and making sense out of something. And so I guess people don't understand things. Art plays a big role in that. And so all of a sudden, somebody gets an idea and starts sharing it, and then people start interpreting it through that same lens, and then all of a sudden you've got the Denver airport.
So what you're saying is that's a conspiracy theory that's not true, that it's a bunch of garbage. Is that what you'd say, Doc?
I have to put that in the garbage, I guess, container of my.
How would you interpret that incredibly grim painting in the middle of Denver? What the painting depicts it looks like hordes and hordes and hordes of hungry, desperate, starving people and military posts where they're all being siphoned through. It almost looks like Auschwitz. That's the main part of it.
Well, it does have Nazi-like overtone, even Stalinistic overtones in the angularity of some of the features. But it's a piece of art.
Then you have the monument. Okay, but it's a monument it's a piece of art that's right near a monument for the Freemasons, who notoriously love to put crazy images right out in the open in their art on the back of dollar bills, right in your fucking face. How do you explain that?
Why do I have to? It put me on the committee that designs this stuff, and I mean, we've got in a town that I live in. Sometimes we've got by the railroad 3 or 4 big giant red X's, and it was hugely controversial when it came out, and everyone thought it was porn, or it was representing stay away, or it was World War II tank traps. It was just this awful thing. And now it's sort of a cultural icon. It's part of the city. It's what gets pictured, when you're describing the area. But at first, I mean, people thought, I'm surprised nobody went down there with a dump truck and just destroyed it. And I don't know, I could see the Denver airport. Maybe they put that in because people want to go to the Denver airport, which makes money for the airport, just to see that this thing actually exists, this giant, crazy mural.
They actually, I heard that they took it down because there were too many people coming and making a ruckus.
That I don't know. I don't know if it's been taken down. We'll have to ask Joel, who's on the podcast with us frequently, who lives in Denver.
I love that horse, too. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. And, of course, the road system looks like a giant phallus. I mean, there's no end to the... I actually listened to a podcast once on this, and I thought, my gosh, what I look at things like that, if that's how you interpret the world, I can imagine just these gaping holes in your general knowledge base, and also the amount of fear you must walk around with when you see things that don't quite fit. You wonder, is something wrong? Is that evil being presented, or is that the conspiracy that shows? I mean, because I could find that anywhere. I mean, shake up a glass full of ice cubes and you can find nude forms all over. Yeah. All you have to do is look.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, nude is fun. I mean, that's art. I'm an artist, I look at things and I edit. I observe things, and it turns out that I'm just fascinated with conspiracies because I don't know, so many of them seem to be coming true lately.
Well, if you have enough of them, I mean, even a broken clock's wrong twice a day, or right twice a day. I mean,
well, let's talk about. I love conspiracy theories because I think they're fun. I think obviously they can turn dangerous, like we saw the Pizzagate thing where the guy went in and decided to shoot the place up, right? But let's talk about conspiracy theories that have proved to be true. I got a list of 3 that I think have proved to be true. The first is Gulf of Tonkin. And that one, Doc, can you give a quick breakdown of what that was about?
Sure. The idea of the the Gulf of Tonkin incident is essentially where a U.S. ship may have got into an imaginary battle with radar shadows and fired a fairly large amount of ammunition. I think 280 3- and 5-inch shells. They think the only damage, which obviously now isn't real, was one bullet hole in the ship. But it basically was reported as if a large battle took place between a U.S. ship and a couple of, North Vietnamese. And it turns out that, in fact, they were probably fighting absolutely nothing. They just had some signatures on their radar they thought were ships, and they got into a battle with them. And, of course, they won.
Yeah.
Because there was nobody there. And then it was treated as a real battle until finally it was, owned up to by the military. I think McNamara that nothing happened. There was never an attack.
But it was one of the key reasons why we got more involved in the Vietnam War, right? So
yeah.
So another conspiracy theory that is MK Ultra, and I know, Dan, you've done some research about this, but MK Ultra is the idea that the CIA was conducting experiments, right, on people about mind control and using LSD. And you know more about that, Dan?
Yeah, supposedly that movie, The Many Hysteric Goats, is there's a huge amount of that's true. And they have, I know they do remote viewing, which is the first level of that, which I've actually done, man. I sat with a woman who was a friend. I went to college. This was his mother. And I sat with her, and she used to teach remote viewing in the Army. What it is basically you have the recent Manchurian Candidate movie had a scene with remote viewing in it. A bunch of insane, psychic intervention, a lot of mind control happening in that movie. But supposedly they have this program where they have on the first level, you have remote viewing, where you sit guys in a room and you have them meditate on, you don't really explain to them exactly what they're looking for, which is the key, because then it allows their third eye to locate it, essentially. I mean, this is how this works on the page, that's how it sounds, Right. What these guys are doing are basically they're meditating and they're finding key locations. Like, let's say they were trying to find Osama bin Laden. The way these guys would have done it was they get the three of these guys in a room who are excellent remote viewers, and they would come up with monuments. They would draw them. They would come up with certain key factors that would help them pinpoint where he might be. And they do this. I did this for Don Peyote. It didn't actually make it into the movie, but I sat with this woman, and she gave me 3 envelopes to choose from. I chose one. She put me through this I was very aware of the hypnosis. I was, I was actually looking toward the camera and making faces, but I did feel like the tone of her voice was bringing me to a certain place. She gave me a pencil, and she said, don't even think, just let your hand move, like it was Ouija. And I drew out, what looked like an ape holding a flower. And she says, okay, open up your envelope. I opened up the envelope. It was a picture from Time magazine, and it was an ape looking down, holding, and it was a mirror image of what I had drawn. It was an ape holding a banana. And if you looked at the 2 pictures, it's like, oh, it's not a flower. Of course, it's holding a banana. And I said, what are in the other envelopes? She gave me the other envelopes, and one was a fucking skyscraper, one was a fucking airplane. I don't know how I did this, but I did it. So this stuff does exist. I'm pretty sure they've been doing it since the 60s. The introduction of acid was huge because what happens with acid is basically your inhibitions are removed, and people think that you're able to access, definitely your pineal gland revs it up, and you're able to access more of your brain, and you see things differently, and being able to see things out of the box is very helpful for the military. I'm pretty sure it's been going on for a long time. And mind control, I believe, is on mass mind control is introduced to us on a regular level. I heard the CIA basically controls all media now, and they can send all sorts of signals to us through the television, through radio waves, to make us real subdued and chill and not want to hurt anybody or ourselves. And there's all sorts of things they can do. It's proven techniques that they've used.
Well, Doc, what do you think about that? The next part of this episode is brought to you by the Perry Blade Survival Knife, designed by SAS legend Mel Perry. For more information, visit perryblade.com. That's Perry, P-A-R-R-Y, blade.com. One more thing, don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. It's very important to us. Please rate us.
Well, I guess I have to, from a science standpoint, I tend to use some conventional arguments where things that appear impossible or, concepts or topics that appear impossible actually fit into one of three types of impossibility. So we're already kind of in an absurd realm when we're talking about degrees of impossibility. But the actual capabilities of the human mind, as far as like telekinesis or, the reading of thought patterns, stuff like that, is it impossible? No, in terms of the laws of physics. I mean, we are producing electromagnetic radiation. We don't have any way to read that. It does seem random. We can get, some direction out of that, but the range is incredibly small because it's like a tiny radio transmitter. It's not like emitting things that could go around the Earth. So the idea of could there be a connection? Yeah. When you go to remote viewing, there's really nothing that, unless you get down to the quantum level of having simultaneously existing particles or something, there's nothing that would allow someone to have have information that isn't there. The remote viewing statistics, when it's looked at scientifically, often find that there's suggestions made prior, and that there is a strong correlation between somebody's success at remote viewing and their either prior knowledge of the area, visiting the area, maybe even having some suggestion by the researcher. So I guess, I'm not going to say that Dan didn't remote view, because Dan was there and I wasn't. But I think if I was sitting next to him during this whole event, I may come out with a different understanding of what happened.
How do you feel about astral projection?
That's in the same boat. It's okay. It's I guess I have to go down to the foundation.
Do me a favor. There's a story that's floating around. Because for some reasons, the Asians are very good at being psychics, and there's a lot of stories coming out. Also the Russians. There's one story about this woman who was blind, who was almost like 100 years old, and she was incredibly healthy and was able to get by just fine without a cane or anything she was able to see. The government was very interested in this. They were like, because she became famous, and they asked her, they got her in a room, and they said, we want you to, how are you able to see? She's like, what I'm able to do is basically dislocate my soul, and I'm able to, talking about astral projections, and I'm able to kind of helicopter around myself and look around and then come back, and I retain the information, So she says, okay, give me something crazy to do that I can never do. And they said, okay, well, there's a satellite that is hovering above us right now, and we want you to, and she said, before the guy even finished his sentence, she said, you want me to read the serial number on the side of the satellite? Okay, give me a second. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. So they start trying to get on their computers to figure out what the actual serial number is. And before they get to the computer, she's reading it off. She's like, okay, I'm here. And she starts reading off numbers to these guys. And they're baffled how she did it. And she's just sitting there giggling at them. And she, how do you, I don't know how you explain that, but this lady is supposedly using her third eye like her own eye.
Yeah, but how do you know that any of that actually existed?
It's out.
And I don't think satellites have serial numbers, by the way. But
what's that?
They're out of warranty. I don't know if satellites have serial numbers. they make like 400 of them. No, but I mean, how do you know? I mean, I hear stories like that all the time, and
then you just sit there and go, how do you know? And you don't, and then you just say, forget it. You don't look into it, or
I look into it where? Look into it how? I mean, I live in a world of science, and it's like, okay, where's the evidence? Where's the video of that taking place? Where are the satellite experts? I mean,
I want to take
Google
you. I want
a satellite serial number.
I want to take you on. I got to take Matt. I got to take him on my tour, the astral projection. Dan Fogler's astral projection.
I'm all there.
Tour.
Nobody wants
to need
put you and any kind of space alien visit more than I do. Seriously, I just want a real one. I don't want these fake, hokey, backwoods ones that are insulting what I really want. Astral projection would be great. I just can't.
But have you gone out and looked for Bigfoot, man? No. But
I've gone out all the time, 24/7, and
so
I
you're
see
out
all
in the
kinds
woods.
of things. Yeah, all the time.
Okay.
But even that, I don't even need to go out.
Have you ever had an experience that was categorized as something that was unearthly, unworld, out of this world that you couldn't explain?
Things that I can't explain happen all the time. Yes, I have seen strange lights in the sky. Are they UFOs? Sure, they're UFOs. That just means it's unidentified. Can I explain it? No, it didn't make sense. But it was at a Neil Young rock concert in Aspen, Colorado. So
you were on.
But yeah, I sat there and watched them, thinking what I'm seeing does not make sense.
Huh.
But does it? I mean,
what happened? Tell us what happened.
I just saw it was like three distinct lights, fairly bright in the sky, way above. I was trying to get some frame of reference using any parallax or motion I could get, and they just sat there, and then they moved, and then they stopped, and then they moved. It seemed unusual, so I was trying to come up with, in science, basically you try to prove it isn't something, and when you can't prove that it isn't, then you have to accept it. That's how it works. So I'm going through the whole list of things, and I actually have a pretty significant astronomy background, and I'm trying to come up with something. Nothing, under conventional aeronautics.
Were they moving free form from each other, or were they moving together?
They were together.
Oh, so it was like a triangle, like three.
Well, I hate to say triangle because that's a classic one. Through the last couple hundred years of UFOs, I don't want it to get lumped in with something else.
Right.
All of a sudden it is what someone else has seen. But I just remember looking at it, and it didn't make sense. It wasn't, I'm thinking helicopter, I'm thinking airplane, I'm thinking balloons, I'm thinking, some reflection by a laser off a cloud, some way to explain it. And I just came up with zip, so I just filed it away.
I had a
but
crazy
if you go
experience.
Into UFOs, I mean, I love the things, but it's not something.
Go ahead.
It's not something that I think people are ready to deal with at a rational level. They want it, and that's the dangerous part. So then anything that deviates counts because that's what they want. You got to be like Bigfoot. I will believe it when he punches me in the face when I'm riding a mountain bike. There, okay.
Yeah.
But until then, no.
That's that's awesome. Hey, my dad's a doctor. I love all this science stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of normal stuff that's just mind-boggling.
Mind-blowing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like we make new people. I mean, you go to a lab, let's say you get your arm lopped off, and what happens if all of a sudden the doctor says, in less than a year we can regrow that entire arm and you won't be able to tell.
Well, they're doing it on pigs. They're growing pig organs.
We do it all
now.
the time. That's where you came from. In 9 months, you went from nothing to you. We do it. You can, and that's the whole thing. That's not just an arm. That's your eyeballs and your teeth and
but there was a thing recently with the pig. I don't know who's doing it. Finland or something. The pig. They're
growing human organs.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Why is the pig so close to our DNA? Even more so monkeys. That's upsetting.
Is it more so than monkeys?
No, it's not more. It just actually works as a better model.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a lot safer to work with.
Well, I did hear that we have our DNA is 60% the same
Very close.
as a banana, right? Is that
what?
It's probably, we're really close together to everything, but then that's our particular place in the universe. Those are the rules.
Wow.
Right.
You know,
Those are the
left-handed amino acids, but if you
there was a thing with the. I'm sorry. There was
if you speculate other life, it's totally different. Go ahead.
There was a thing with pigs recently, swine, because I love bacon, you know, but I ate it my whole life, and I just got to a point in my life in my mid-30s. I started to like really have digestive issues and really try to figure out what the fuck, you know, I should be eating. You know, I should be on some kind of specific diet for my DNA, essentially. I realized the thing that got me off bacon was the fact that bacon, supposedly, because the DNA is so close to our own, that, Jesus, that when the enzymes in our stomach finish the bacon, it doesn't know when to stop. It just keeps going, and it starts eating the inside of your fucking stomach because it's like, bacon. Because it's like so goddamn close to. So I was like, oh my God, I have to stop eating bacon.
Where do you learn these?
I've never heard that. That sounds crazy.
Well, keep on eating bacon, fellas. Keep on eating bacon. I don't dig on swine, motherfucker.
So you feel better now that you don't eat. Did it work?
I do. I feel wonderful. I stopped eating cheese. I feel like $1 million. Stopped drinking milk. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm going on the non-inflammatory diet. That's what I'm going for.
More power to you.
Sounds good.
Although you might want to study a little about the digestive system and maybe some general biology. The only way you can really build yourself, you know, replace broken parts, et cetera, at the molecular level or the cellular level, is to eat the components that actually are what your body needs, which turn out to be pretty much the same as what your body is made of. So anything that isn't bacon, you know, in your sense that the same as you, is actually high fiber. Just goes right through you. Otherwise, you need it.
So wait, high fiber goes right through you?
Well, fiber in your diet is not something.
Fiber cleans you out, man.
Value. Yeah, cleans you out.
Fiber cleans you out.
So it's either
there's calcium
the stuff your body is
calcium
made
plenty
of
of
that
stuff.
you're eating, or not. But your body doesn't break down the DNA at that level. It breaks down the amino acids and the proteins and uses the energy and the carbohydrate bonds.
I didn't say it breaks down the DNA. I said we talk about the bacon now. I'm talking about the enzymes keep going. The enzymes in your stomach keep eating. That's what I'm talking about, motherfucker. And I'm talking about the fact that I know about digestion. My dad's a GI, man. I grew up with it.
Yeah, there you go. Now, so you know that enzymes are actually catalysts for reactions and don't actually become part of the reaction.
Okay, well, the full reaction, basically, here's the thing, man. The full reaction doesn't shut down. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't stop.
How about this, then? That actually happens anyway. That's normal. That's how your stomach works.
Okay.
So you're constantly destroying the inside of your stomach on your own with all the hydrochloric acid. So it's constantly being rebuilt. So, in fact, what you said is true, but it has nothing to do with bacon.
Okay.
So you're
absolutely right.
So you can eat bacon.
I've realized after I did Don Peyote, I realized that it's impossible to argue anything, because one day coffee kills you, and the next day butter gives you life, and the next day everything is wonderful, and the same thing fucking destroys you. So there's no way, but it makes for good conversation.
Yeah, I just don't pay attention to anybody.
I do pay attention, man.
I
pay a lot of attention.
Woods, man. That's my goal.
No, this is what Doc's saying his goal is, that he wants.
To live in a cabin in the woods, away from everybody?
If the coffee kills me, then I guess it killed me. But am I going to stop drinking it? No. Because then I'll start killing other people.
All right. That sounds fun.
Your call,
fun,
man.
Doc.
Me or you? So Matt, you had some general conspiracy ideas you talked a little about. As we wind this down, do you have anything in particular you want to throw out to?
Well, I wanted to talk about this is the last question, really. I want to ask about what you think is the relationship between, we talk a lot about shit hits the fan scenarios or end of the world as we know it scenarios, and at what point do conspiracy theories intersect with those kind of events?
Well, Dan, you want to start? I've got some ideas, but I want to
No, you please. Go ahead. I want to hear you before you shoot mine down.
No, sure. You bet. Let me reload here. No, I think when you're talking about conspiracy theories,
you taking the world.
Yeah. No, I'm drinking coffee.
There you go. Reload.
I think there's a lot of out here reload means something different.
So you got a gun or something?
He's in Montana. Yeah.
Of course. So anyway, the idea of having conspiracy theories and end of the world overlapping, I think if it's a natural disaster, I think people are probably going to fall on their conspiratorial beliefs in order to make sense of it, which I could see might speed up their reaction, but also might conflict with what the proper direction of outcome is, in order to survive, depending if you're kind of like H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, when it was put on the radio, people already had a preconceived notion of what was going to happen because of their conspiracy theories, which were, aliens invading. But instead, they didn't take the reality of the situation, even if it was actually an alien invasion. Some people killed themselves. People were trying to escape cities because why? Well, aliens attack cities. That doesn't sell well when they attack, central Montana, because nobody cared. So I think, we always blow up buildings in New York or Los Angeles. So that's what's ingrained in the kind of collective psyche. And then I think there's also maybe that chance that people will instigate something. If it's not a natural disaster, they'll have watched, enough end of the economy videos or World War III videos or, an invading army video like Red Dawn. And so when something triggers that, then they react that way. So they may actually kind of create their own end-of-the-world reality that would not have been there otherwise, except the seeds had been planted through fiction. And so I see those as two kind of scary things, kind of like a Bigfoot Hunters. There's a TV show, Bigfoot Killers. You heard about it? Now you've got these people that are walking around in the woods trying to convince themselves that this thing is real and that they can kill it because they're allowed to. So, the first old guy in a wool coat that gets shot, is going to be a tragedy. But they're literally conjuring up a fake environment, and then they're trying to operate within that fake environment. And I see that just on a global scale. If you step back and look at politics today, you're kind of seeing people are taking their place in where they believe this is going. And the problem is, coming from science, not from a psychological standpoint or a sociological standpoint, but from a scientific standpoint, it'll play out on its own. But if we intervene with our own, beliefs, then it becomes an unpredictable system. We don't know what's going to happen because the parameters are changing. They're not natural parameters, unless you're that 100th monkey.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Dan.
I mean, there's enough things out there that we're living a sci-fi movie right now. The Hadron Collider alone, could just open up a black hole and that's it, At any moment, they're just playing with that. People like Trump in the White House flailing their pinkies and hitting nuke buttons by accident. I meant to do it. Stuff like that. I feel like, holy shit, I feel like it's the beginning of The Running Man or something. Right? I feel like, check it out. Crazy.
Schwarzenegger's Running Man?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Starring us. Starring us.
Starring us.
Yeah, we're all going to be on some. We're going to be on. It'll be really fun and patriotic, and people will spend lots of money, and everyone will watch us run for our lives while the shithouse goes up in flames in this, reality television world we're living in.
Yeah, that's the idea of entertaining ourselves to death, right?
Well, there may be good to that, actually, Matt.
Tell me about that.
At some point, the human population is going to probably reach a point where there physically aren't enough activities and jobs for everyone to be doing whenever they want. So you might actually need to pacify a portion. That's your patriotic duty, is to take yourself out of the activity for a while to let other people participate. I mean, what if, we get up to 15 billion people? New York's got a 21 million person population stuffed into there, so you simply cannot get into restaurants, you cannot get into movie theaters, the traffic's at a standstill. So the only way you might be able to function is to just zone out, put on your goggles and play video games for the next 12 hours, and then it'll be your turn where you can actually go to the restaurant and, just do the numbers, and you're going to exceed the capacity. And not every building, I mean, Starbucks tried it. How many Starbucks are around you, and there's still a long line.
I know.
At every single one of them.
I know.
So the lines will be so long it'll look like Russia, right?
Now you might be onto something there.
Welcome to Brooklyn
my gosh, you're
territory.
Right. So basically, we're bringing back, communist Russia from the 1950s. This is good stuff. But we don't know it because it's for our drugs, our caffeine.
Dude, you got to read
overpriced
Gladiator. Exactly. You got to read Brooklyn Gladiator.
Yeah.
Let me get you a copy.
All right.
Okay.
Brooklyn
Doc,
Gladiator.
I want to know I want your opinion of how I see the next 20 years going. That's what Brooklyn Gladiator's about.
Piece of cake. I can do 20-year projections overnight. It's those, 100-year ones that I bog down a little.
Thank you guys so much for being on the podcast. I enjoyed this one.
It's a pleasure.
It was a fun one.
This got crazy.
Thanks.
Crazy. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
You bet.
Don't forget to listen to Dan's podcast, Dan Fogler's 4D Experience, and if you haven't seen it yet, check him out in Fantastic Beasts. You won't regret it. You've been listening to the Survivalist Podcast with Mark Buhali, Doc Montana, and Matt Gould. Brought to you by Survival Cash, Forge Survival Supply, Epic Water Bottles and Filters, and the Perry Blade. Please visit our website, thesurvivalistpodcast.com, for more information.